What if I told you that the moment you stopped wanting to argue, something inside you had already changed, and that change was not defeat, not exhaustion in the way you once understood it, but a quiet graduation from a version of yourself that needed the friction to feel alive? Most people walk through their days convinced that tiredness is just tiredness, that when they no longer want to defend their position or correct someone's misunderstanding, When you stop needing to be right, you often find that they come to the truth on their own, in their own time, in their own way. Because the truth is not a weapon you wield to beat someone into submission. It is a light that people move toward when they are ready. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply hold that light steady, without forcing anyone to look at it. The second sign is that you have begun to notice the cost of engagement, not just in terms of time, though that is part of it, but in terms of energy, emotional residue, the way certain conversations leave a film on your spirit that takes hours or days to wash off. You used to be able to argue with someone, make your point, maybe even win, and then move on with your day. But now, even when you are right, even when you articulate your position perfectly, you feel drained afterward. You feel as though you have given away something you cannot easily replenish. And this is not because you are weak or fragile. It is because you have become sensitive to the quality of your own energy, and you have realized that not every exchange is worth the price. There is a kind of violence in argument, even when it is civil, even when it is well-intentioned. It is the violence of forcing your reality onto someone else's, of demanding that they see what you see, feel what you feel, agree with what you know to be true. And for a long time, you might have thought this was just how communication worked. You present your case, they present theirs, and through the clash of ideas, some kind of clarity emerges. But more and more, you are realizing that clarity does not come from conflict. It comes from stillness. It comes from listening, not to respond, but to understand. It comes from the willingness to sit with ambiguity, with not knowing, with the possibility that both of you might be partially right and partially wrong, and that the full picture is larger than either of you can see. You have started to feel this in your body. After a heated conversation, even one you did not start, even one you tried to avoid, you notice your jaw is tight, your shoulders are raised, your breath is shallow. You notice that your mind keeps replaying the exchange, refining your arguments, imagining what you should have said, what you could have said, what you will say next time. And you realize that this is not peace. This is not clarity. This is the residue of a battle. And even if you won, you are still carrying the wounds. Jung wrote about the shadow, that part of ourselves we repress or deny, the qualities and impulses we deem unacceptable. Space for the other person to be who they are without needing to defend themselves. Space for you to remain grounded without needing to prove anything. Space for the conversation to unfold in its own way, without force, without agenda. And in that space, something unexpected often happens. People relax. They stop performing. They stop trying to win. And sometimes, in that relaxation, they say something true, something vulnerable, something that reveals the real issue beneath the surface argument. And you realize that if you had jumped in with your rebuttal, if you had tried to correct them right away, you would have missed it. You would have missed the opportunity to actually connect, to actually see them, to actually be present. Jung spoke of the transcendent function, the psyche's ability to hold opposites in tension without collapsing into one side or the other. This is what observation allows. It allows you to hold your truth and their truth simultaneously, without needing to resolve the contradiction immediately. It allows you to sit with the discomfort of not knowing, of not having all the answers, of not being able to fix or change or control the other person. And in that sitting, in that willingness to be with what is, something new can emerge. Not a compromise, exactly, but a third thing, a deeper understanding that could not have been reached through argument alone. You have started to notice that the people who argue the loudest are often the people who are the most afraid. Afraid of being wrong, afraid of being exposed, afraid of losing their sense of identity or control. And when you see this, when you really see it, it becomes almost impossible to engage with them on the level of argument. Because you understand that what they need is not to be defeated, but to be seen. What they need is not to be corrected, but to be reassured that they're still okay, still valuable, still worthy, even if their perspective shifts. And you cannot offer that reassurance through debate. You can only offer it through presence, through patience, through the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are and not needing anyone else to validate it. The fifth sign is that you have begun to recognize the pattern, the script, the repetitive nature of most arguments. You have had this conversation before, maybe not with this person, maybe not about this exact topic, but the structure is the same. Someone says something, you react, they defend, you counter, they dig in, you escalate, and round it goes, and nothing changes. No one learns anything. No one grows. Both of you just end up more entrenched in your positions, more convinced that the other person is stubborn or ignorant or unwilling to see reason. And you have started to feel a kind of weariness when you sense this pattern beginning, a recognition that you already know how this will go, and you do not want to participate anymore. This is not cynicism. This is pattern recognition. This is the wisdom that comes from having walked the same road enough times to know where it leads. And it leads nowhere, or rather, it leads back to the beginning, to the same unresolved conflict, the same unmet need, the same fundamental misunderstanding that no amount of arguing will fix. Because most arguments are not really about the thing you are arguing about. They are about something deeper, something older, something that has nothing to do with the present moment and everything to do with the past, with childhood wounds, notice that the people who are most uncomfortable with your silence are often the people who are most invested in your reaction. They want you to argue because your argument validates their position, gives them something. authority, you also become less interested in trying to change other people's minds. Because you understand that everyone is on their own journey. Everyone has their own inner authority, and it is not your job to override that, to convince them to see things your way, to pull them onto your path. Your job is simply to walk your own path, as honestly and courageously as you can, and trust that the people who are meant to walk with you will recognize something in you that resonates with something in them. Not because you argue them into it, but because your presence, your authenticity, your groundedness called to something true in them. The 10th sign is that you have begun to see conflict as information rather than threat. This is a subtle but profound reorientation. In the past, when someone disagreed with you or challenged you, your nervous system would interpret it as danger. Your body would tense, your heart would race, your mind would go into overdrive, trying to defend, to protect, to survive. Because somewhere deep in your conditioning, you learned that conflict equals rejection, that being wrong equals being unworthy, that losing an argument equals losing your place in the tribe. But now, you are learning to see conflict differently. You are learning to see it as a source of information, a signal that something needs attention, that there is a misunderstanding or a misalignment or a difference in values that is worth exploring. Not through argument, not through force, but through curiosity, through the willingness to ask, what is this really about? What is this person trying to protect? What am I trying to protect? What are we both afraid of? When you approach conflict this way, it stops being a battle and becomes a conversation. It stops being about winning and losing and becomes about understanding. And in that shift, something softens. The other person feels it. They feel that you are not trying to defeat them, that you're not trying to prove them wrong, that you are genuinely interested in what they have to say. And often, that is all it takes for them to soften too, for the defenses to come down, for the real issue, the real fear, the real need to emerge. This does not mean every conflict can be resolved this way. Some people are not ready to be curious. Some people are too invested in their story, too attached to their position, too afraid to be vulnerable. And when you encounter those people, you do not need to force it. You do not need to try to drag them into a different kind of conversation. You can simply acknowledge the impasse, honor the difference, and let it be. Because you understand that resolution is not always possible, and that is okay. You can hold your truth, and they can hold theirs, and you can both move forward without needing to annihilate each other. Jung understood that conflict is often a manifestation of inner conflict, that the battles we fight with others are reflections of the battles we are fighting within ourselves. And so when you stop seeing conflict as a threat, when you start seeing it as information, you also start to turn that curiosity inward. You start to ask yourself, what of me is being triggered right now? What old wound is this touching? What part of me is afraid of being seen, or judged, or rejected? And in asking those questions, in being willing to sit with the discomfort of not having immediate answers, you begin to heal. You begin to integrate. You begin to become whole. And here's what you might be noticing. If you have been paying attention, if you have been willing to sit with all of these signs without rushing to fix or change or understand them too quickly, you might be noticing that all of these shifts are connected, that they are not separate developments, but different expressions of the same underlying transformation. You are moving from a place of reactivity to a place of responsiveness. You are moving from a place of needing external validation to a place of trusting your own inner knowing. You are moving from a place of seeing yourself as separate, as needing to defend your boundaries against a hostile world, to a place of recognizing your wholeness, your interconnectedness, your fundamental okayness regardless of what anyone else thinks or says or does. This is not a linear process.